Hi, everybody, and welcome to Creating Interactive Student-Authored Digital Publications for Independent Reading. I'm Paul Cancelleri. I'm an 8th grade science teacher at Rollsville Middle School outside Raleigh, North Carolina.
I'm Erica Speaks. I teach 6th grade language arts at East Cary Middle School in Cary, North Carolina.
You probably are already at the TAC that has these links on it, but if you received this recording some other way, the QR code and link that you see on the screen will take you to an interactive agenda that has links to more detailed explanations and writing by Erica and me.
So this journey started in 2002. I started at a school that had an expectation for all language arts teachers to require independent reading and have some measure of that independent reading. Some teachers had projects. Some teachers required a certain number of pages. By the end of the quarter was a letter grade. Some students had page minutes with those page numbers, and the parents signed a log, and that got turned in. So there were different ways that my department managed that, but that was an expectation for everyone. So I spent several years going through different things. We did papers and projects, and parents had lovely art abilities in terms of what they turned in. I began to wonder if my curriculum was about decoupage skills or art skills, and I began to wonder how much really was about the reading and the learning that was part of my curriculum. I tried lots of independent reading logs that they turned in weekly. And I experimented with that. I tried pages versus minutes. If you required minutes, I found students would put down a large number of minutes and parents would sign it, and I did not have any value of what they'd read. So that was frustrating. I found myself scanning signatures and checking with parents because I got a lot of things that were suspect, and I was managing that and getting sort of away from the core purpose. These logs that are being filled out that no one else sees but myself, that are piled on my desk as I'm scoring them. So I wasn't happy with the different things that I tried over the next several years. And I just got very frustrated. So I began thinking there has to be a better way to do this. I tried to think about what is really my goal. What is the learning goal? That there are students who are going to read no matter what you do, and there are students who aren't going to read without a lot of encouragement. But what is my goal for them to get out of that reading for what they're doing? I want them to be able to summarize what they've read to a point, but I also want them to be able to evaluate it and think critically about it. I want it to be simple for me to grade. I want it to be equitable for all students. I also want to remove myself as the sole audience of what they're working on. This was in the years in 2007, 2008, where Web 2.0 tools were becoming really prevalent, and I'm thinking there has to be a way to bring all this together so that there'd be a really good system. I found myself with a problem, though. I had some restrictions moving forward with a plan because even though I thought technology seemed like a great answer, in this time frame, teachers weren't allowed to use any social media at my district at the time, not just no Facebook or Twitter, but no Edmodo. To do something like Goodreads wouldn't have been allowed because you'd have to have an account that the students are setting up, and there are age requirements, and my students are younger than that. And I wanted to customize it. I wanted to keep it without an account. I wanted to keep it simple, and I wanted it to be something that I could control and manage what I wanted the students to think about and report back. So I tried to look at some of these restrictions of what I couldn't use as maybe an opportunity to tailor a tool of what I could use. So while designing my own technology tool was really appealing, I knew what I wanted. I really had no idea how to do this. It turns out step one was just knowing Paul, because he had an idea of how to do this.
So I looked at what Erica was looking to do and some tools I was familiar with, and came up with sort of a simple process that involved 3 tools. I'm going to talk about the specific 3 tools that we used in just a moment, but broadly speaking, we needed a way to capture evidence of student reading by having them write about what they read. And then we wanted that writing to be transferred to a digital publication that would give them an authentic audience. And so we opted eventually for a Google form that is customized by Erica to ask for the kinds of information that she wants and needs for grading, as well as the kinds of information that we would want to put onto the web. We use an add-on, a free add-on to Google Forms that translates the data from that form that we want on the blog post and sends it as an email to the blogging platform that we use, which is WordPress. And then once WordPress receives the email, it publishes it as a blog post. And so all of these tools are free of charge, and there are variations on this that will work just as well. But like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. If you want to know step by step how to set this up, the links in the interactive agenda to the blog post that I wrote include instructional videos that are just a few minutes long each that will walk you through that. So the first step, the only real piece that students interact with directly most of the time is the form. And the form is embedded in a page of the website, of the blog, and it has a password to keep just random strangers who happen upon the blog from submitting book reviews. The form asks for some basic information like the student's first and last name. We separate them so that we can publish their first name only in their blog post. But of course, Erica needs the last name for the purposes of grading. We ask for their class period and the number of pages in the book, as well as we ask them to select a genre and give the book a rating. And then there are a couple of open text areas in the form where Erica has created guiding questions that help students to write about the book as well as what they thought of the book, which, as she says, is the most important part of this whole process. So that's the form, and from a student's perspective, that's where they start. When they finish entering their data, they click on the Submit button at the bottom, and they're all done. That's essentially the end of the process for them in terms of making the book review. On the other end of the process is the blog. After they hit submit, within a few minutes, the blog post can be up on the blog. If, as a teacher, you're looking for more moderation, more control over that process, you can require that those posts wait until you've approved them before they get published. But it can be as simple as the student hitting the submit button, and that's it. You can see in this little example here that the blog post includes some of the information from the form, such as the first name of the student, the title of the book, the author of the book, and then the text that they wrote in response to Erica's questions gets translated into several paragraphs that basically summarize the book and give their take on it, what they thought of it. And so that's essentially how the tool looks, how it feels to a user, whether it be somebody visiting the blog or a student entering in the form.
There were many outcomes by transforming my independent reading to using this tool from the traditional methods that I described earlier. One was the proofreading with a purpose. The weekly reading logs weren't something that sixth graders proofread. I mean, it didn't matter. It sat on my desk. I graded it. I gave it back to them. They put it in that big front pocket at the front of their binder, and there wasn't any real incentive to apply the rules that they may or may, they may already know to capitalize and just don't do. But if we talk about it being out there for a wider audience, it's a lot easier to get buy-in for them to proofread and check their work carefully. I also set my settings to have it email me whenever a post was created and send that post to me. So I might not stop and score everything, but I could look over it and give it a cursory glance and know if I needed to speak with a student about resubmitting or editing from there. Another outcome was the writing for an authentic audience. Middle schoolers love an audience of their peers, and knowing that their peers are going to read it, that they could send a link of their review to grandma or mom, that it was something that could be widely acceptable and accessible from a lot of people, really was something that enticed them. The fact that it had voice and choice built in, the ratings that they gave, the 5-star ratings that Paul mentioned, really valued their perspective and gave them a voice about what this book says. So if I rated a book and gave it 5 stars, and Paul rated the same book in his review and gave it 4 stars, they'd both be in the blog, but under student ratings, you could search under 5 stars and find mine, and 4 stars and find his. So it even placed their reviews in a sorting by what they said about the book. Same thing with genre. The genre is set up so that it can be sorted that way. So again, because their peers are making these reviews, it could be their springboard for what their next read might be. If you're a student who really likes mystery, you search the genre for mystery and see what your peers are reading. You'll also see there's a search function, and some students searched a topic or a character or a name, but they also searched their peers' names to see what their peers had written. So it became a real place for them to have a voice about the books they're reading and some choice about what they might read next based on their peers, which is the audience they care about in adolescence. I did have some students have some interaction with authors. Authors probably Googling their title and seeing what's out there about their book, came to find their book being reviewed by a middle schooler. And so they wrote a response. Thank you for reviewing my book, or thanks for those 5 stars, or keep reading. And that's really powerful. It was powerful for those students and for their peers. It was another powerful thing to reference when you're talking about the proofreading. Spell Rick Riordan's name right, so if he's Googling his book, it'll come up. To be able to start the year, both the open house with the parents, the explaining about this procedure to the students, and be able to show them some of these and say that this is something that can happen and has happened, is really a powerful thing too. So it just makes it another part of that authentic audience. For me personally, too, the simplification of the grading process was really appealing. Again, the email of the posts that I can look at and be able to say right there to that student. It made it much more timely than logs that were paper that I may or may not get to as fast. And because it goes to Google, the way we use our tools, because it goes to a Google spreadsheet, I can download it by Excel and sort by student and see the reviews there again, and total page numbers or minutes or number of entries or any other salient data that will tell me how much they've done for their grade. So it's really simplified grading, where I might be looking at projects over several weeks or reading logs each week, all on many hours each Saturday. This became something that was much more simple to manage. As they enter a review, it also gives the timestamp date, so it wasn't when did that paper come to me, or a parent about the project being late or on time. A lot of that was very easy for them to see. It was online, and parents could access it, and it simplified a lot of those issues.
So in summary, our system is built from free tools. It's pretty simple to put together, and once it's set up, it's turnkey. The students go to the website, type in the password that's the same for every student in their class. They fill in their book review, and it's automatically used to generate a blog post that you can then have students and authors and members of the public come to and view and provide feedback on. Altogether, a really simple tool to use. And don't forget that we provide links to our blog post with much more detail about the how and the why of this entire process.
So when Paul and I presented this at ISTE 2015 in Philadelphia, we had several questions from the session. One I wanted to speak to, just because it might be on your mind, is what about cheating? What about people copying the Amazon review and pasting it into the form? And what I told the audience member who asked that was, well, first of all, they can do that on the paper reading log too. They could copy their sentence, or they could, again, like I said, parents making the project for them or something like that. But it was easier for me to be able to paste it into Google, because it was already electronic, and find the source. And because those are coming to me via email, when I'm reading that Amazon professional reader's review, that doesn't sound like, so-and-so and that child, and so I can have that conversation right then. It's happened a couple of times in like the 5 years, but it's not something that's happened very often. And you just handle it like you would any other project that comes up.
And another question that came up during our ISTE presentation was about the security, the safety of the student's privacy. And what we spoke to was that you can customize a lot about this process in a trade-off between ease of use for the teacher and the privacy or the security of your students. For example, you can make your entire blog sit behind a password so that it's not open to the public. And yes, you don't have to worry about what students write or catching things that are inappropriate from going on the internet. But we argue that you really give away a lot of the authentic audience motivation that works in favor of students. You can also set up comments that come to your blog to be held in moderation, and that's probably a good idea so that nothing gets published on a blog that you're standing behind, that you're advocating for without your approval from students or adults alike. And then finally, you can set up the delivery of the blog posts so that they are held as drafts until you've had a chance to look them over. And that way, even if a student accidentally hits that submit button with less than perfect entries in the form, it doesn't turn into a live post immediately.
And when Paula mentioned also that you have a password for the form, I wanted to make sure I made it clear that that's a password you give to your students, like the mascot of your school or something else. That is not that you've created accounts with a password for each of your students. So again, it's very user-friendly for the teacher. Turnkey was a good term for it. It's not something that you are setting up individually that every student has a password. It's just something that keeps it for your school's use to be writing reviews. We hope we've answered the questions that you might have had, because they're the ones that came up. If not, also on the TAC, you'll find not just links to our blogs, but also our contact information. So if you have questions, feel free to contact us and let us know what other questions we could answer for you.
Thanks for watching.